Okay, so today we're going to be looking at our rights as citizens and how they've really been shaped by the judicial branch, the Supreme Courts, and all of the inferior courts, and how all of those ideas really derive from the Constitution, but how have they have changed over time because of the courts. So find your rights as interpreted by the judicial branch in Canvas. And throughout this lesson, I'm going to really be using the First Amendment and just one part of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, to really give you an idea of what I'm talking about in terms of how things have changed over time because of different court rulings. So we'll start off here, and I have the entire First Amendment in this first picture in step one. So Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Okay, so that's all the Constitution really has to say about freedom of speech. Usually that's one of the most basic rights people think about when they say, oh, we can say whatever we want, right? But we have to think about it in terms of the scope of limitations of different rulings, of different nuances between the different court rulings. So it's difficult. So this is all they have to work with, right? Abridging, if you read it by that one section by itself, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So sometimes, like if I'm analyzing this, one justice might think, what does the word abridging mean in the late 18th century, right? So you might question that word specifically. You can question the word speech. Does that mean just something you say? Is that something that you write down? Is that something that you express in another way, non-verbally? So you could take this in a bunch of different ways depending on the text of the Constitution. And this is one of the most controversial things because it can be taken in so many different ways. So the second image, we have an example of Uncle Sam here with gas and free speech saying, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the Constitution, right? So maybe what's the person who is the author of this image thinking whenever they made this? What type of argument are they more in favor of freedom of speech, like a looser definition of it, or are they more in favor of a strict definition of freedom of speech, right? Is this type of behavior protected under this First Amendment? That's for the courts to decide, and they have decided it. So this is a great video I like with going along with this first type of issue. So in step two, we're going to watch this video, and I want you to identify and submit 5 factors which complicate the constitutional definition of free speech. Okay? What factors complicate that original definition? Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Okay? So let's watch it. We'll see what we come up with.
Free speech. It's the thing everyone thinks they value until they hear something they don't like. And today, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the free speech battles happening on college campuses. "2017 was a big year for free speech. White nationalist rallies and the Take a Knee movement sparked tons of media attention and controversy. College campuses across the country, including where we are now and where I went to school, UC Berkeley, go Bears, are at the center of this free speech debate. It's the same.
So they have this within the context of a college campus, but you can really think about it within a space of any kind of like public square.
Story over and over again in the news. Protests erupt over a controversial speaker who comes to campus, sometimes shutting him down and sometimes resulting in violence. And this draws a divisive line between people who want to limit controversial speech at campuses and those who believe that anyone should have a right to speak freely, no matter how extreme their views. What exactly does free speech mean on college campuses? First, some background. Freedom of speech is protected under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It basically means the government cannot arrest or punish you for speaking your mind. You're totally free to bash whatever or whoever you want. The president, Congress, tech bros, decaf coffee, Florida. Anyway, the point is the government can't come after you for it.
That's an important point. It kind of goes under the radar, but that's a super important point. The purpose of the amendments, or specifically of the First Amendment, is so that the government can't punish you for expressing your beliefs, or that's one way to look at it, right? Does this stop you from having consequences if you say something nasty to a person around you? No, it's not going to stop those consequences, or it might not stop those consequences. This is so the government doesn't interfere with your ability to express yourself. So that might be one factor that complicates this all.
The founding fathers thought this was fundamental to democracy, and they were right. Without free speech, there couldn't have been the civil rights or women's rights to vote movements. And who knows, maybe our next president will be a woman. But to be clear, free speech just applies to government and government entities, which are places that are funded by your tax dollars at work, folks. And yes, public universities fall into this category. Private companies, on the other hand, can censor you all they want. That's why ESPN, for example, can fire a sports anchor for saying something that goes against their company policies. But that anchor can't get arrested for what she said.
This is something, it's kind of similar to what I said before, but it's overlooked. You're not free of consequences from what you say just because you have freedom of speech as constitutionally guaranteed, right? So there's still consequences to what you say. You can't just claim freedom of speech and then say whatever you want, right?
Or the NFL could make a rule banning players from kneeling, but players couldn't get arrested if they chose to do it. But there are some limits to free speech, like blackmail, making a threat, soliciting a crime, inciting violence, lying under oath, and violations of copyright.
These are huge. This is exactly where the courts step in, right? So you can't threaten somebody. The classic example is that you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, right? Because it might directly incite people to get hurt, right? From exactly what you're saying. So you do not have the freedom to say that if it's going to directly cause somebody physical violence or pain, right?
Are some of the things that are not allowed. And here's where a lot of the controversy on college campuses comes in. Hate speech. Like this person who feels strongly that college campuses should be no place for hate.
Racism isn't welcome, bigotry isn't welcome on this campus, and we can't set a precedent for giving people who are espousing hatred to have a platform on this campus.
But the truth is, when it comes to giving speeches to crowds, for the most part, hate speech is protected. And just so we're all on the same page here, hate speech usually refers to attacks on people based on their race, religion, sexual orientation, gender disability, and the like. So, a speaker can totally say racist, homophobic, or mean-spirited things about groups of people. I mean, hey, that's pretty messed up, but it's also not illegal. It's super hard for someone to get punished for hate speech when speaking to a crowd. Basically, it can only happen if this speech immediately and intentionally provokes a crowd to commit a crime. So for
the standard of evidence for this as well, too, if somebody were to be charged for inciting violence, it can be a little hard, right? It can be entirely based on the circumstances in which it's arising, right? So these types of cases can be difficult to prosecute, especially if it's coming from witness accounts, firsthand accounts, and really what people heard in the situation, if they heard exactly what was being said correctly. So a lot of factors go into if somebody can actually be punished for this.
For example, a KKK leader is allowed to give a speech saying lots of terrible things about different races. But what would be illegal is if the speaker pointed to someone in the crowd and yelled, "Attack that person," and then the crowd actually did. Now, it's super easy to hate speech. It's mean, offensive, and can really hurt the people it's directed at. But there's a good reason why it's protected. Think about it. Do you really want to put the power in the hands of the government to decide what they consider hateful? Say we've got a president that finds hilarious parody videos like these SNL clips to be hateful and decides to make them illegal.
You know, I actually love football. I could have played. People say I remind them of an NFL player because I'm combative, I like to win, and I might have a degenerative brain disease.
Oh my God, what happened? What happened was you made Barack Obama angry. And when you make Barack Obama angry, he turns into The Rock Obama.
I mean, it wouldn't be America if we couldn't make fun of our own president. Okay, let's go back to college campuses for a second. Public universities, like where we are now, UC Berkeley, are public entities because they're funded by US tax dollars. So a public university can't deny any speakers based on their views, no matter how crazy or extreme they are. In fact, last year, Auburn University tried to get white nationalist Richard Spencer to stop speaking on campus, but a federal judge ruled that that was a violation of his constitutional First Amendment rights. But things get complicated when student or public safety is involved. Like when UC Berkeley had to dish out $600,000, yes, that's over $500,000, when conservative speaker Ben Shapiro wanted to come to campus. Could universities just use a threat of violence to shut down speakers whose views they don't agree with? And who should bear the cost? The universities, the speakers, or a combination of both? Free speech advocates believe a university...
This is why it's so complicated, right? Because you have to think through all of the different consequences of having people expressing their different opinions and juxtapose that with maybe the views of the people on campus in terms of the security that would have to come, and all of those factors really play into these high-profile cases.
Must do everything in its power to allow and protect speakers. One of the most outspoken advocates is Robert Reich, an economist and professor at Berkeley who's known for his liberal views. We see him all the time on the news, advocating for free speech for some of the people he disagrees with the most.
I tell my students all the time the best way to learn something is to talk to people who disagree with you, because that forces you to sharpen your views and test your views, and you might even come out in a different place. A university of all places is the locus where we want to have provocative views.
And do you really want administrators deciding who's offensive? I mean, where do you draw the line on hateful speech? If a liberal campus decides to ban Spencer, could a conservative campus decide to ban Colin Kaepernick or Hillary Clinton? Censorship goes both ways. So, what do you think about all this? How should universities...
I don't even know if I agree with the term censorship in this circumstance, but that's really how some people view what happens whenever certain speakers or certain views aren't allowed to be on campus. I think it really has to do with a host of different factors rather than just purposely censoring a particular point of view, but that really rests with the people making those decisions. So be sure to submit 5 factors which complicate these different definitions of free speech a bunch throughout that video. For step 3, you're going to select one of the following topics you would like to look into further. Notify me via Teams messaging which topic you'd like to choose. If you don't do that, then you won't be assigned this. So this is super necessary for you to get a topic, and so we don't all have the same topic whenever we're looking at this. And some of the options are freedom of religion, equal protection under the law, this is my favorite, federalism, campaign finance, criminal procedure, such as search and seizure and due process, the 8th Amendment, which is cruel and unusual punishments, and then personal liberty, that really has to deal with privacy, thinking about things like abortion rights and all those types of things. And in step 4, after I have approved one of these via Teams messaging, I want you, using your selected topic from step 3 and additional personal research, answer the following prompt. How has the interpretation of your topic changed over time? This is the question for the judicial branch. How has the interpretation of your topic changed over time? And with all of these, it has changed over time. A lot. So I've given you links to really get you started with some of the different court cases which have ruled on these. And I want you to do the following. Define your topic and what it means. How the Constitution originally addressed your topic. Include quotes, so just like I did up here with the First Amendment. And then how court cases have reinterpreted or redefined the topic. Provide 3 examples. Like, for example, court cases have ruled that it is protected under as political speech, that people can burn the American flag, right? So that'd be one example of a court case where they weighed in on this original constitutional amendment. And then what your topic means to citizens today in terms of the limitations or the precedents of your topic, right? Campaign finance is like a huge one that sticks out in my mind with the different court cases that go with this one, and how it really changes people's perceptions of why elections work the way they do, especially this one, Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. So some good stuff here. Be sure that you message me with your topic so I can approve it so you can move on to step 4. And then what you ultimately submit is your responses to steps 2 and 4. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day.